Imagine a 7-year-old child so terrified of um, a routine dental checkup that they physically faint right there in the waiting room.
Wow. Yeah, that's intense.
Right. And to an onlooker, it just looks like a severe behavioral meltdown, or, I don't know, maybe just a kid acting out to test their parents' patience.
Which is what a lot of people assume, unfortunately.
Exactly. But inside that child's brain, an acute life-threatening danger alarm is going off. So today, whether you're a parent, an educator, or just, someone fascinated by healthcare and psychology, this one is going to hit close to home.
It really is. Treating this as a simple discipline issue is where so many of us, adults and healthcare providers alike, just get it completely wrong.
Yeah, and that is exactly our mission for this deep dive.
Hmm.
We're exploring the hidden, really profound impact of childhood medical and dental phobias. But we aren't just going to admire the problem today.
No, we actually have a solution to talk about.
We do. We are going to examine a comprehensive model currently operating in Georgia called MentalSpace School. And to guide us, we're pulling directly from a document titled MentalSpace School, Healing Childhood Medical and Dental Phobias.
It's a great source. Really eye-opening.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with what this phobia actually looks like on the ground, because the symptoms detailed in the text are, well, they're intense.
They are. I mean, the source outlines a whole spectrum of severe symptoms. You see crying, uncontrollable shaking, flat-out refusal to even go to the appointment.
Like they won't even get in the car.
Exactly. And then it escalates to physical stomach aches, hiding, trying to literally run away from the clinic, and as you mentioned at the start, lightheadedness, or even fainting at the sight of blood or needles.
Yeah, the text specifically uses the phrase intense, persistent fear. So it's not just a passing phase or, a momentary case of the jitters that you can negotiate away with the sticker.
Right. What's fascinating here is that phrase, intense, persistent fear. It implies a genuine physiological and psychological distress response. It's triggered by specific environments, shots, blood, dental work.
Let's actually dig into that fainting aspect because the text mentions it specifically in relation to needles and blood. I think most people assume fainting is just a dramatic reaction, or maybe they're just hyperventilating.
Well, no, what you're looking at is often a vasovagal response.
A vasovagal response. Okay, what is actually happening in the body when a child passes out in a dental chair?
So when the brain perceives the medical setting, like the sights, the sounds, even just the smell of rubbing alcohol, it triggers severe distress. The vasovagal response is your body's nervous system essentially overloading.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, your heart rate suddenly drops, your blood pressure just plummets, and blood flow to your brain is temporarily reduced. That is what causes the fainting.
That's terrifying.
It is. It's a hardwired physiological reaction. It's not a behavioral choice at all.
So it's almost like having a faulty smoke detector in your house. Like the alarm goes off not just for a massive fire, but every single time you make toast.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Right, because the brain is treating a sterilized dental tool with the exact same adrenaline and panic response as it would like a charging bear.
Hmm.
And honestly, the dread builds for days before a visit. It's like this dark storm cloud slowly gathering on the horizon. It ruins not just the day of the appointment, but the entire week leading up to it.
That analogy captures the mechanics perfectly. The alarm is real, the noise is deafening to them, but the threat assessment is just broken. For the child, that sterile room becomes the trigger for this overwhelming physical cascade.
So the waiting room is literally a nightmare. But what happens when that nightmare causes you to just stop going altogether? Because avoidance is basically the most natural human response to a nightmare, right?
Oh, absolutely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, avoidance is a highly logical, short-term survival strategy. If touching the stove burns you, you stop touching the stove. If the clinic causes your nervous system to collapse into panic, you stop going to the clinic.
But the text explicitly outlines the physical dangers of that avoidance. And the ripple effect it describes is massive.
It really is.
Yeah, it mentions skipped vaccinations, which obviously has sweeping implications for both the individual and, public health.
Mm-hmm.
And it mentions delayed medical care. So a minor infection that could have been caught early is just left to fester.
Right.
And then there are the dental issues that, as the source puts it, quietly worsen.
Yeah, because a cavity does not heal itself.
Mm.
And missed developmental screenings mean you miss those crucial windows for early intervention. But honestly, the most insidious part of this ripple effect is the psychological compounding.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if this specific childhood fear is left unaddressed, it doesn't just evaporate when the kid turns 18. It packs its bags and follows them right into adulthood.
Okay, that actually raises a really thoughtful question for me. We all know adults, friends, family, maybe colleagues, who have visible dental issues or who proudly announce, like, oh, I haven't seen a doctor in a decade.
Right, the I never get sick crowd.
Exactly. And the societal default is to judge them. We assume they're just procrastinating or they just don't value their health. But based on this text, could it be that a lot of them are actually just suffering from the exact unaddressed childhood phobias we're talking about right now?
Oh, for sure. It forces you to completely reevaluate the concept of procrastination. Procrastination is so often just a socially acceptable mask for anxiety.
Wow. Go.
When a 30-year-old says, I just haven't gotten around to making a dentist appointment, what might actually be happening mechanically is their nervous system hitting the brakes because it remembers the sheer terror of being 7 years old in that chair.
Because nobody ever gave them the tools to dismantle the fear when they were young.
Exactly. The avoidance behavior just became hardwired.
To think of adults silently carrying that faulty smoke detector for decades, just navigating their entire lives around it. It really changes how you look at the healthcare system.
It does.
But this is where the text pivots to a genuinely hopeful truth. As paralyzing as this fear is, it is very common, and it can be overcome. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yes, the treatment model.
Right. The text outlines specific interventions. Child-friendly exposure therapy, CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and simple coping tools specifically for needle fear. And it notes this needs a calm, collaborative care team guided by a licensed clinician.
And the goal here is so important to highlight.
The goal isn't to brainwash the child into loving the doctor. The text says the goal is simply to learn that the doctor doesn't have to be scary. Like neutrality is the finish line.
Taking the terror out of the room is the entire objective, and the mechanics of how they achieve that neutrality are fascinating. Exposure therapy, especially when it's child-friendly, is about gradual, safe reintroductions to the trigger.
But just looking at a scary thing doesn't necessarily make it less scary if your internal alarm is still ringing.
Precisely. If you just expose them to the needle without any tools, you're just traumatizing them all over again.
So how do they actually fix that?
That's why the text pairs exposure with CBT and simple coping tools. It's the magic formula. CBT helps the child identify their catastrophic thoughts. For a kid, the thought might be, this needle is going to hurt forever, or I'm never going to leave this room.
Oh, right, because kids think in absolutes.
Exactly. So CBT teaches them to slowly replace those catastrophic thoughts with realistic ones.
And how do the simple coping tools fit into that cognitive rewiring?
The coping tools are the behavioral anchors. So we're talking about deep breathing techniques, muscle relaxation, maybe visualization. You're giving the child an internal toolkit, so when the faulty smoke detector goes off, they now have a way to manually turn down the volume.
They learn to handle the distress without fainting or running away. Okay, so we understand the mechanism. We know CBT and exposure therapy work. But here's the reality check. A working single mom cannot easily pull her kid out of school every Tuesday at 1 p.m., drive across town, sit in a waiting room for a 45-minute therapy session, and then drive back.
No, it's almost impossible for most families.
The institutional friction is just way too high. So how do these great therapies actually reach the kids who need them? And that leads us to the delivery mechanism we're exploring. The MentalSpace School K-12 model in Georgia.
This is where the clinical theory meets real-world application.
Yeah, the logistics outlined here are super impressive. MentalSpace School provides K-12 mental health support directly into Georgia schools. They offer same-day teletherapy, which is huge, and they have dedicated therapist teams for each school.
And the text specifically notes that these are licensed, diverse, culturally competent therapists.
Right.
That cultural competency piece is vital for CBT to actually be effective. Therapy requires immense trust. If a child feels understood by someone who aligns with their cultural background, that trust forms much faster.
So the cognitive work can actually take root.
Exactly.
I see the value in that, absolutely. But I have to play devil's advocate here and push back on the teletherapy aspect.
Okay, go for it.
I'm just trying to picture this. We just established how visceral and physical this phobia is, right? We're talking about a child whose blood pressure is dropping, who is shaking and terrified. How does same-day teletherapy, literally a face on a screen, actually cut through that level of physical panic?
This raises an important question, and it's a very valid skepticism, but based on the text, the answer lies in the timeline and the broader ecosystem MentalSpace provides.
Okay, what kind of ecosystem?
Well, they aren't just treating the child in a vacuum. The text notes they offer family counseling, staff wellness programs, crisis intervention, and even suicide and violence prevention. It's a vast infrastructure embedded in the school.
Right, so it's not just an app.
No, not at all. But to address your specific point about a screen stopping a physical panic, it works because of when the intervention happens.
Oh, you mean they aren't doing the teletherapy while the kid is actively in the dental chair?
Right. They are preloading the toolkit. The teletherapy provides immediate same-day intervention within the school setting. Imagine a child spiraling into an anxiety attack in class on a Wednesday because they know they have a doctor's appointment on Friday.
So they're already panicking days in advance.
Exactly. The teacher or school nurse can facilitate a secure, private session right then, maybe setting up an iPad in a quiet corner of the nurse's office. The therapist works with the child in that moment.
So they are teaching those breathing exercises and the CBT tools in a neutral, safe environment before the child is forced into a terrifying medical clinic.
Yes. You cannot teach someone how to build a parachute while they are falling out of a plane.
That is a great point.
If you wait until the child is in the clinic staring at the needle, their brain is already in survival mode. They can't learn new coping skills. The teletherapy model lets them practice turning off that smoke detector while they are safe at school. So by Friday, they already know how to regulate their breathing.
Okay, that completely reframes how I view teletherapy in this context. It's all about accessibility in that crucial window before the crisis.
Precisely.
But, moving from the therapeutic approach to the administrative reality, a solution like this only works if schools and families can actually access and afford it. And the text gives us some very specific details on how MentalSpace handles compliance, cost, and outcomes.
And those details are staggering.
Let's look at the financial barrier first. The source states they accept Medicaid, and for Medicaid patients, the cost is literally $0.
Which is huge.
Yeah. And they also accept a massive list of private insurers. Let me read it here. Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Cigna, Aetna, United Healthcare, Humana, Peach State, CareSource, and Amerigroup.
If we translate what that list actually means for a parent, it represents the total removal of financial panic. Poverty and healthcare access are just deeply intertwined with mental health. When a parent is dealing with a child having a severe medical meltdown, they are already at their breaking point. If you add the stress of some unpredictable out-of-network therapy bill to that, the family simply will not seek help.
No, they can't afford to.
Right. So by offering $0 Medicaid and taking virtually every major private insurer in the state, MentalSpace isn't just saving parents money, they are actively breaking a generational cycle of medical avoidance.
And the data supports that. The text lists some specific outcome metrics that we have to talk about. It shows a 92% reduction in anxiety and an 85% family satisfaction rate.
Which makes sense given the CBT we discussed.
Right. But the one that really caught my eye is an 89% improved attendance rate.
Yeah, that 89% is incredible because it connects mental health directly to academic survival. Physical ailments, chronic stomach aches, refusal to get out of the car in the morning. These are often just symptoms of underlying anxiety.
So by treating the phobia, you're literally getting them back in the classroom.
Exactly. When you remove the mental health barrier, you keep students in their desks. You're preserving their educational future right alongside their medical future.
Now, I want to unpack one of the denser sections of the text because it mentions some specific administrative stuff. It says MentalSpace is HIPAA and FERPA compliant, which, you'd expect for anything involving health and student records.
Sure.
But it specifically notes they provide HB 268 compliance support and points out a July 2026 deadline. Why do these administrative acronyms matter to the average listener?
Because privacy laws make school-based healthcare an absolute logistical nightmare for educators. HIPAA protects medical privacy, and FERPA protects educational records. When a therapist operates inside a school, those two massive sets of federal regulations collide.
And schools are probably terrified of violating these laws.
Oh, absolutely terrified.
So when the text mentions compliance support and specific state bill deadlines, like HB 268 for July 2026, it's telling us something about their business model. They're essentially taking the legal and administrative headache completely off the school's plate, right? So educators can just focus on teaching.
That is the crucial insight. They aren't just dropping a therapist into a school and saying, hey, good luck. They're acting as a deadline-driven compliance partner. They navigate those federal and state mandates so the school district doesn't have to build that legal infrastructure from scratch.
That makes so much sense. And for any listeners in Georgia who want to explore this ecosystem for their own community or school, the text provides their contact details. The website is mentalspaceschool.com, and their email is mentalspaceschool@churchitherapy.com.
It's definitely worth looking into.
So what does this all mean? If we pull all these threads together for you, the listener, we are looking at a reality where childhood medical and dental phobias are not just behavioral quirks. They are intense, paralyzing distress responses.
Like a faulty smoke detector setting off a vasovagal reaction.
Exactly. And if left untreated, they create this dangerous ripple effect of medical avoidance, skipped vaccines, and worsening dental issues that can last a lifetime. But crucially, the brain can be rewired.
It is highly treatable.
Yes. Through child-friendly exposure therapy and CBT, kids can learn to regulate their own nervous systems. And models like MentalSpace School are completely revolutionizing how we deliver that treatment by bringing immediate, culturally competent teletherapy directly into Georgia's K-12 ecosystem.
Completely bypassing the logistical and financial roadblocks that usually stop families from getting help.
Right. So whether you have a child who is currently terrified of the dentist's chair, or whether you yourself still feel that familiar dread sitting in a clinic waiting room, this text offers a genuinely hopeful truth. You don't have to live with the fear. The alarm can be reprogrammed.
And, we've seen how unaddressed childhood medical fears lead to adults who just avoid doctors and dentists entirely. It really makes you wonder how many other seemingly stubborn adult behaviors or aversions are actually just the ghosts of unaddressed childhood phobias, quietly running our lives from behind the scenes.